That's like impossible to follow, by the way. Like, I mean, I wrote a song with Beyonce too, and it's like, you know, no big deal. But yeah, whew. Also like moderately hungover too, so there's that. All right. So I'm Mickey Meyer. I am one of the founders of a comedy community called Jash. I'm here to basically give you kind of a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what all it is that we do, and hopefully some of it's maybe applicable to what it is that you have going on, or maybe we can work together. I don't have the superphone thing yet, but I'm going to figure that out because that's really cool. So yeah, a little bit about me. I was lucky enough to be one of the original team members of Maker Studios, so I got to see that kind of erupt and got to be a part of that, which was an unbelievable ride. And then got to basically turn my focus more towards comedy, which was something that was more of a passion of mine, and kind of apply everything that I saw there to helping out comedians. So this is awesome, by the way. I've got this, I've got like a laser pointer too. So if you just see me like get distracted for a minute, there's going to be a reason for that. So we were founded originally by Silverman, Reggie Watts, Tim and Eric, and Michael Cera. And the whole thing kind of came to be because of the YouTube original channel initiative. So we were part of like the second round of funding there. And I don't think really anybody knew what was going to happen, including YouTube. I think that they, were giving out some of these grants hoping to find their rhythm a little bit more and attract advertisers and all that fun stuff. But we started by just kind of going out to our community, going out to different people that we worked with, and asking what they wanted to make, and we got back this unbelievable swath of content. We got back short films, we got back music videos, we got talk shows, we got kind of like this unbelievable response from all these different creators out there that had just passion projects, things that they really cared about, things that they wanted to make. And my background being in that kind of Maker Studios world had this initial kind of like knee-jerk reaction to it, where when we were presented with this 20-minute, incredibly dark short film from Michael Cera called Gregory Go Boom, and I was just coming off of producing and overseeing epic rap battles, which is very formulaic. It is under a certain time limit. You always are making sure that that first 10 seconds is engaging, and you're kind of following all this like ABC of like how to make something successful on the internet. My gut reaction was like, well, this is 20 minutes and it's like the most depressing thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, how do I get people to actually want to watch this? And we put it up, and we put it up during Comedy Week, which was like the most ironic thing in the world maybe, and it exploded. It got, millions of views, and the comments were insane. And for me, and I think for all of us, it was kind of this epiphany moment of like, there's a need here. There's a need for people that want to watch something that is maybe outside of that bucket of very like formulaic content. There's definitely kind of this rhythm that is started to evolve, and there's obviously like clickbait is everywhere and anywhere, but there's a need to create content that is digital first and substantive. There's now like the technology is getting there for people to be able to watch that content in a comfortable way, but that content's not really finding its rhythm there. So that's where we started to find our own rhythm, was in helping comedians to make that content possible. And in turn, it's serviced us in a lot of different ways. And I think that like where, for us, we tend to be very confusing for people is that we're not Funny or Die. We're not College Humor. We're not that front door. Because you look at maybe the state of comedy right now, and for the most part, every comedy destination is that. It's a front door. It's when you want to watch some comedy, you have to go to funnyordie.com. You go beyond those doors, and then you can watch comedy. But that's the reality for us, and for I think everybody, is that that's not really how people are consuming content. People aren't really going to .coms, and so now those destinations are using Facebook or using Instagram, whatever it is, to get their content out there. But to go one step further, for you, the person that maybe wants to watch comedy and maybe isn't necessarily that passionate to go to a .com or to even follow some of these places, you're following more these guys. You follow Sarah Silverman, you follow Seth Rogen, you follow somebody out there that is making their own voice be known, and they have their own brand, they have their own thing. So for us, what we just found we found kind of our own rhythm with was being kind of this back door instead of the front door. Follow Cera Silverman, we're going to produce that thing that you watch. We're going to make it substantive enough that for us as a business, we can window it. We can put it, we can give somebody a premiere to it. We can put it as part of an OTT deal. We can enter that into some sort of international sales package that we can then put out there. But for you, the consumer, you have the content coming to you in the way that you don't have to go out and find it. So again, that's kind of where we found a lot of our stride was in being that kind of backdoor. So when you like Cera Silverman, we can then say to you, hey, here's 20 other comedians that you should also know about. So to that point, we look at producing content in a very different way. We look at it as a monetizable development process. So what that means, beyond just a very cliche term, is that means we're taking what we feel is a very broken system where you have traditionally a larger network or someone like that out there trying to develop kind of in a bubble, kind of behind the curtain. You have a creator who has maybe worked their way, or a comedian who's maybe worked their way up in the comedy scene, goes out and is lucky enough to maybe get a couple pitch meetings, get some representation. They take their property out, they pitch their thing. Maybe somebody likes it enough that they give them $25,000, $50,000 to lock up that IP to make some sort of proof of concept. Maybe that is lucky enough to get put into some sort of a pilot. You get maybe $150,000, something like that at this point. They like the pilot enough that, we're going to take a chance on the series. Now, maybe there's a $500,000, $600,000 commitment at that point. They put the series up. They have to market that series. Now we're over the $1 million mark. Second episode doesn't perform that well. Let's shelf it. At that point, the network is out a bunch of money. The creator's out maybe 2 years of their life. That IP also maybe is seeing a litany of different compromises along the way. They've been told, in order to get this money, that red chair isn't as funny as the green chair. Put the green chair in there. Content isn't as strong. With digital, we have this unbelievable ability to write that process, to make something that is authentic, that is made with autonomy, and put that out into the world and test it in real time. And it's amazing. People really have not started to mess with this as much as you really can. So for us, this is the opportunity, right? And so this is where we see the future of comedy. This is where we see things going, is that we support these comedians. We're kind of this spine for them in the background of this community, and we are viewing the development process as something that we can ultimately see a profit on. So we put things into 3 different categories. One, an original IP channel. I have no idea how to play the thing that's associated with this, but we'll not worry about it. But I'll use the laser pointer really quick just to point at it. This is something that has a weekly cadence. It's something that we can put out there that has, can build a following of its own. We have a show called Getting Doug with High, where Doug Benson smokes weed with a new comedian every week. It's great. If you guys smoke weed, watch it and smoke weed. Repackaged one-offs. We make everything from, again, short films, music videos, things like that. We repackage those into something that we can then sell out as a show called Rubberhead, or as animation, or as pranks, whatever that repackaging kind of a bow is. And then pilots. When we make pilots and we want to test out a show, we just made a show with Matt Besser called Archipiana. It's amazing. You should go watch it. But it is kind of like a news radio meets Parks and Rec kind of thing that we like. We found Matt. We love the idea. Let's make it. You go here. Let's go take a chance on this thing. And then we have the ability to immediately distribute that either through Jash's audience or through Matt's audience direct. So that's one side of it, right, for us, and that's one side of what we are building out and where we see kind of the future of comedy consumption, and at the same time the future of comedy development. The other side of it is a branded business, and this is it's something that obviously everybody in this room is incredibly familiar with. Everybody's versed with how this world is working right now. So I don't want to harp on this too much, but it's important to mention in that what we've done in bringing together a comedy community is made hopefully both sides of the equation, again, a little bit better, we've made their lives a little bit easier. We have, for advertisers, aggregated a bunch of comedians so that when they have that hope for an idea that's maybe a little bit out of the box, that idea that is a little bit obscure, but at the same time is funny at the end of the day, they can come to us and we can reach out to our entire community, a group of 300 different comedians, writers, directors, performers, editors, and we can say, hey, here's the opportunity. Here's the thing that we were just given. Purina came to us and they said, hey, we want to market this product. We're not sure what it is to do. And we can go back to them and say, here's a ton of ideas that are out of the creative director, box. We're not going to give you something that is just like, hey, here's another commercial or like some like branded entertainment thing that fits in because it's like 3 minutes as opposed to 30 seconds, but it's still a commercial. We can give them the kind of like the obscure idea, or we can come to them and say, hey, here's this passion project that Sarah Silverman really wants to make. She wants to make this home improvement show. Here's a thing that exists. You want to support something, you want to support comedy, Home Depot, because you now have this piece of content that's going to be made that you can integrate into seamlessly. We've now made that conversation a lot more fluid. This is kind of the last piece of it, and then I'll finish up here. But this is how we look at our community, kind of on the internal, giving you guys kind of the full peek inside of it. What we're doing is we're aggregating these larger performers, again, writers, actors, directors. We're giving them a lot more than even is up on here. We're working to give them health insurance. We're working to give them discounts on travel. Comedians travel like crazy. We're going to give them opportunities for press, easy prompts that they can answer. If you are a publisher and you want people to be talking about Trump, it's like you can say, hey, you know what? We want a bunch of riffs on Trump. We can put that out to our community, get back a whole bunch of different prompts or a whole bunch of different responses in the blink of an eye. But then for us, it allows us to look at this ability to create new comedy brands. You know what? We see all these different comedians starting to aggregate around pranks. Here's something that we can then turn on in the blink of an eye, right? We can now flip the switch and say, okay, here's a piece of IP that we see kind of bubbling up within the community. We're going to create that brand, and we're going to create that brand so that it has audience around it as well. And then finally, a lot of these numbers are actually kind of even outdated at this point, but this is the overall benefit outside of getting to make the thing that these comedians care about, is that they're gaining, by proximity, a relevant audience, right? This isn't a collaboration with, a makeup guru where that audience isn't ultimately going to come out to see one of Sarah's shows or isn't going to go watch Sarah's movie or buy Sarah's merch. Sarah, by being brought into our world, has gained the audiences of Tim and Eric, the audiences of Reggie Watts, the audiences of Michael Cera, and all of the other comedians that we've helped to issue collaborations with. And for her, that's incredibly valuable. I mean, you look at what Ryan is doing, and as we can start to get even more in that direction of being able to work with our audience that much more directly and start to cut out some of those middlemen, this is an audience that she can monetize. She can monetize directly. And it's an audience that cares about what it is that she's doing. That's it. That's the peek behind the curtain. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, right after that guy, man, that guy was like, this sounds good. I'm at a loss.
That's okay, Jim. It's okay. It's okay.
And you got me drunk last night, too.
Oh, it's okay. One of the questions I want to ask you is the challenges that companies can sometimes face is when they're trying to work with brands and they're getting these opportunities. And usually we hear about the whole RFP process and you get all these different RFPs and you're always trying to create or develop ideas that are custom to those brands and those opportunities. How do you keep your creative teams motivated to keep generating new ideas that match those? Because we all know that there's hundreds of RFPs that go out, and to constantly be generating new ideas is always a challenge. So how do you do that? How do you keep those ideas fresh for those brands and try to make them feel like they're special when you deliver that idea?
This is kind of the beauty of it, right? Is that we're not one guy in a room that is like kind of hitting a writer's block or something like that, or is finding themselves just regurgitating the same information. For comedians, it's a chance to be funny. You know what I mean? At the very least, like you have some of these guys that are on the road traveling like crazy and are sitting in a hotel room somewhere, and for them, when they get that, like, hey, Totino's wants to make something that could reinvent the brand or could, like help to get this product out there, whatever it may be.
Tim and Eric.
Tim and Eric did, yes.
Yep.
It was. But, you know, it's an opportunity for them to just kind of riff and write. You know, these guys love to write. So, and it's got kind of a purpose to it as opposed to like, hey, sit and think of something that is funny for your routine. This is something where they can actually see a return on it. And for that, for the most part, like you have to think too, like most comedians are pretty poor. Like there's the top tier of people that have made it successfully and are touring and are making a ton of money, like the Kevin Harts of the world. But there's also a ton of other people that are up and comers that either are maybe not able to travel yet, don't have that representation yet, or maybe a writer on a show but aren't out there be able to perform. That show maybe they're lucky enough to get put on, you know, a new show that maybe gets canceled or something like that. They're out there, they want to get their voice out there. So it's kind of a win-win, right? It's like you have this group of people that is incredibly hungry that wants to make people laugh and that want to make content, and you have all of these brands and for that matter, networks that want to get funny. You know, they want some piece of creative, and so it's kind of a match made in heaven.
I'd like to open it up to questions in a moment. Last question for you is, how do you get the brands to relinquish control to those creators? How do you get them to say, okay, Tim and Eric, if you guys don't know Tim and Eric, you should know Tim and Eric. I would be terrified if I had a brand to give control to Tim and Eric, though I would love the output. Yeah. How do you get your brand partners to be comfortable working with creators like you have?
It's transparency. I mean, honestly, it's like 100% transparency. This is where I've learned a lot. One of the other founders in our company, Doug DeLuca, some of you guys may know him. He's an unbelievable guy. He's also an executive producer on Jimmy Kimmel Live, but he's been working in the brand business for 20-some years at this point. And what he does very incredibly well is, you know, start kind of every conversation around like kind of with a brand, like what are your parameters? What are the things, what are the guardrails here that you want us to work within? Mm-hmm. And as long as that's on the table and everybody's very honest about it, it becomes about this like just transparency of dialogue, right? It's like the clarity that you have to make right at the beginning is like, listen, we're the comedians. Mm-hmm. That is why you're hiring us. If you're coming to us for comedy, don't say that the red chair is funnier than the green chair, because you hired us for that.
Funny.
Yeah, you'd be amazed. But you know, it's a process always, because every brand has their own quirks, right? Every brand has their own sensitivities, and it is something that we are there to then help the comedian with, and at the same time help the brand with.
Excellent. Questions for Mickey? We have the microphones. We'll bring them around. Right up here in the front. Hold on, they're coming.
Thanks. That was awesome. So on the slide with Sarah Silverman there, what is it that you bring in particular that makes her numbers grow? Is it purely the collaboration between different comedians?
It's a hybrid, right? It's like you have, for us, we have platform specialists, so we have individuals who are focused just on the Jash community as it exists on Facebook, as it exists on Reddit, as it exists on Instagram, kind of so on and so forth, looking into the community at all times, trying to figure out ways to cross-promote within, so we can say, okay, you know what, Sarah, you're low right now on Facebook. Here's someone who has got a much bigger presence on Facebook. Let's figure out a way for you guys to do something together, even if it's as simple as just a picture. You guys are going to be at this show together in Missouri on this date. Let's try and grab a picture of the two of you guys. Let's put it up. Same thing with kind of best practices, which is like Sarah, when we first started working together, it's like she wasn't posting really any photos. She wasn't posting any videos. It's just giving her kind of that heads up of like, hey, Facebook Live is erupting right now. We just want to let you know you should try and put that more into your day. Find the way that you can start to work that in. And then optimization is just being on the back end of it so that we can say, okay, here's what we know what Sarah's going to do. We know that she's got this video she wants to do around Bernie Sanders. And we help her to produce that video. We help her to execute on that video. And that video goes up. We figure out, okay, who are the key shares beforehand? We know that the Bernie Sanders camp is going to want to share this. We know that these different political sites are going to want to share this too. So let's reach out to them, let them know that that video is coming. Let's make sure that in the tags, we're also tagging Hillary Clinton, that we're tagging, you know, all the appropriate folks so that we can make sure that this piece of content gets shared. Doing the kind of the back end for her, if you will.
Excellent. Last question for Mickey. And it can be about the sauna traditions of Finland at 2 in the morning. He will fill you in on all those details.
Super vague.
Yeah.
Super vague. No one here gets that.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Cool.
Mickey, thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Cool.